नमस्कार, आदाब, सत श्री अकाल, केम छो? दोस्तों, मैं करण मेहता आप सभी का स्वागत करता हूं लेजेंड्स ऑफ डिजाइन के एक और धमाकेदार एपिसोड। लेजेंड्स ऑफ डिजाइन एक ऐसा शो है जो हमारे देश के दिग्गज आर्किटेक्ट्स की जिंदगी को सेलिब्रेट करता है। दोस्तों, आज का ये एपिसोड शुरू करने से पहले मैं एक बहुत ही फेमस कविता की 2 लाइंस आपको सुनाना चाहूंगा। दिखा गई पथ, सिखा गई हमको जो सीख सिखानी थी, बुंदेले हर बोलो के मुंह हमने सुनी कहानी थी, खूब लड़ी मर्दानी वो तो झांसी वाली रानी थी, वो तो झांसी वाली रानी थी। इतिहास गवाह है रानी लक्ष्मीबाई के अटूट साहस का, जिसकी बदौलत उन्होंने पूरे देश में एक नई क्रांति लाई थी। उसी तरह इंदिरा नूई अपनी अटूट मेहनत और संघर्ष के बदौलत उन्होंने पेप्सिको जैसी विशाल कंपनी को आसमान की ऊंचाइयों तक पहुंचाया। दोस्तों, ऐसा कोई प्रोफेशन नहीं है जिसमें महिलाओं ने आसमान की ऊंचाइयों को ना छुआ हो। सही मायनों में एक औरत ही प्रेरणा का प्रतीक होती है। उसी तरह हमारी जो आज की गेस्ट है, उन्होंने भी हमें ये यकीन दिलाया है कि एक पुरुष प्रधान समाज में अपनी पहचान बनाना शायद मुश्किल हो सकता है, लेकिन नामुमकिन नहीं है। उन्होंने अपने करियर के शुरुआती दिनों से महिलाओं को सशक्त बनाने का प्रयास किया है। तो आइए देखते हैं हमारे आज की गेस्ट की एक छोटी सी झलक।
I've been working as an architect for over 4 decades now. I had no business plan, but I just knew I loved being an architect. I would have a practice that along the lines that I have today, but I passionately loved what I do and what I did, and I believed that I would not be peripheral to my country and I would be able to make a difference. I believe an architect is the conscience of the built and unbuilt environment. I am Brinda Somaya, architect and urban conservationist, founder architect of SNK Somaya and Kalapa Consultants.
So ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for an architect and an urban conservationist, the living legend, architect Brinda Somaya. Brinda ma'am, I thank you so much from the bottom of my heart, and it's an honor to have you with us today on our show. Thank you.
Thank you, Karan. It's my pleasure to be here today with you.
Welcome, ma'am. Ma'am, I've been fortunate enough to know you as a person in the last 2-3 months. One thing that I have observed in you is, despite of being such a successful architect, you're still very approachable, down to earth, and a human person. Where did this come from?
Well, you know, I don't believe in star architects at all. I believe that my profession is very much a collaborative profession with working with people of different ages, different dimensions. So it's not my glory, it's not my success. Okay. It is truly the success of the studio. And also the clients, the people we work with, the people for whom we build. That's our success.
So ma'am, we have some amazing bunch of young kids over here from architecture colleges. They would like to know, how was Brinda Somaya as a kid?
Well, I was a chatterbox for one thing. And I was born after independence, but not too many years. I was born in Bangalore, where I originally came from, I should say, because I come from this small part of India called Coorg, where we grow a lot of coffee. And then, of course, moved to Calcutta because my father was a power engineer. He worked with the Damodar Valley Corporation, which was building power soon after independence for the country. And my mother was a zoologist. Her master's was in sharks. And I have an elder sister. So we moved to Calcutta, where I stayed till I was about 8 years old. And Karan just mentioned about being a chatterbox. So when I was in school there in Loreto House, I used to talk so much in the class I was in that they decided to give me a double promotion, hoping that when I found it more difficult to work, I would be silent. So I went to the next class and I began to chatter there too. So I think they gave up. But then
Yes.
Then in the late 50s, we moved to Mumbai because my father changed his job. And ever since then, I've truly been a Mumbaika. I consider myself very much from this wonderful, wonderful city, which gave me every opportunity to become what I am today.
Okay, okay. Ma'am, how did architecture happen? Was there any specific incident that you decided, yes, this is the profession I want to pursue, or it just happened naturally as a progression?
There was very much an incident. My parents believed in taking us around India. I mean, we live in such a glorious country with so much to see. And those days, we didn't go to Dubai or Singapore or wherever for holidays. We actually went around our own great country. So my parents would drive us, and on one of my visits when I was very young, I must have been just 6 or 7, my parents took me and my sister to Nalanda, the ancient Buddhist monastery. And even though I was so young, I still remember the red brick. And at that time, I decided I wanted to become an archaeologist. Eventually, archaeology turned into architecture, and I have no regrets. And that's how it happened.
Ma'am, you are probably one of the few initial women in architecture who started at such a stage where women were not so much thinking about architecture as a career because there are construction sites, you have to work with laborers. So, how were those days like, your initial days in the profession or even in your college?
Well, I think we were hardly about 10 women in a class of 60, which is quite different from today, where I think women are more than 60%. Um, and I went on to do a master's degree in the United States and then came back. So the first few years, I guess it was a lonely life in many ways. I married my husband. At that time, he was in the army, so we were moving around. So I never thought I could work for anyone. So I just started thinking about doing small projects on my own. And so it was circumstances. I never dreamt that one day I would have a studio like I do and do work like I do. So that's how it all started. So the first 10 years of practice, I would say, were very lonely. I don't think there were any women who had their own practice, or if at all, very, very few. So it was challenging, but I was quite happy doing my own work and enjoyed it, loved it. You have to be passionate about what you do.
Ma'am, you also got an opportunity to study abroad, but then you came back to India, and I'm sure there is a story behind that. Would you like to share it with our audience?
Certainly. So like many young people today, when I finished my bachelor's, I felt I needed to see the world, learn, and decided to go to the United States. I had already been there for a year as a school exchange student, so it wasn't totally new to me. So I went for a master's, and after I finished an MA, where I took many different subjects, because I believe what's really important for an architect is to have the depth and the spread of many, many ideas and thoughts and not be narrow in their thinking. And so I did a Master of Arts, doing many, many different subjects. And then I was doing summer school at Cornell University, where strangely enough, today I'm a professor. And after doing some design work, I remember one of the Indian professors there, they called me for lunch at their house. And in the meantime, I had applied to both Columbia and Cornell to do a second master's degree. I had chosen Columbia. And I thought I would stay on in the US. Those days it was very easy. It was the 70s. There were no visa issues. But at this lunch, I remember it was all Indian professors and their wives. And all they talked about was India. But it was the India that they had left many, many decades ago, whereas I had come just 2 years before, and I had come from a different India. So I could see myself 20 years from now sitting having lunch with a whole lot of people, thinking about the India that I left 20 years ago, which is totally different, and decided that's not what I wanted to do. So I went back, and the next day I wrote to my parents that I've decided to come home, wrote to the universities that I'm not going to do any second master's degree. I did not want to be peripheral to society. I wanted to be part of it. I wanted to be part of the change that I believed I could be.
So that's pretty much about her, love for the country, which we all know. Ma'am, I'm aware that you are a person of very humble beginnings. Could you please share that story with us? What was your first office and your first job or your first architectural project like?
So when I came back, I worked for 6 months in an office, which to be honest, I didn't like at all. But I learned because I spent 6 months doing toilet details and staircase details. And everybody knows that if a staircase is very difficult to design. But after that, when I got married and my husband being a surgeon in the army, we were moving around and I was just wondering what I should do. And there are many stories. We don't have time today to tell you all those. But eventually I set up a small office in a Mali's shed next to my house because, that's all I could afford at that time. And it was very close to where I stayed. I stayed on Cuff Parade, which was a beautiful part of the city. But this was an old dilapidated shed. And that's where I began. This was in 1978, 76, 78. And then my elder sister, who at that time was in the United States, also an architect, came back to India. And we started working together. But in 2 years, she and her husband decided to move back to the West. Okay. So I just had this short interlude with her. But that's how we have the name Somaya and Kalapa Consultants.
And it still remained with you.
It still remains.
Ma'am, our initial days are very crucial, be it anyone, be it me, you, or even them. As far as I know, there were 3-4 clients of yours in your initial days of your career who are probably still your clients today. How was their support like, and how was their support in terms of shaping you in becoming the architect that you are today?
I think what's important, which young people ask me all the time, is how do we get our first project? How do we begin if we want to start on our own? And as I said, I left the staircase and toilet job, and then my father told me that the military club in Mumbai was looking for a design for a clubhouse. But he told me there will be no payment. It's going to be a pro bono job. Are you interested in doing it? And, it was for the military, and I think I'm quite patriotic, so I thought, why not? Never thinking that it would lead anywhere. So I did this project for them. I did the design of the clubhouse, and there was a committee. That project never took off. But on that committee was a gentleman who was on the board of the Bombay Presidency Golf Club. Oh. And then he said, we are looking for an architect to do some work for us there, and we like what you've done here, although it's not going to happen. So come and meet our committee. And that was my first job, was the BPGC Golf Club. Oh. I remember I got the enormous amount of 25,000 rupees for that project, and I was so excited, which covered everything. And then on that committee was the Chauhan family, who owned the Pale products.
Yes.
And they saw that work and gave me my first real bigger project, which was actually an industrial project. It was a wheat storage go down for them. And that's what sort of set me on my own project after project. Until last year, they were still my clients. My daughter Nandini, who's also an architect, joined me 15 years ago. So she's working with their next gen. So what's really important for an architect is to develop these sort of relationships with the people you work for, whether they're the clients or whether the people who are going to use the building. Unless there's empathy And unless there's affection and understanding, you will never succeed. Then you are just a sculptor.
Correct.
An architect is not a sculptor. We have to go beyond that.
Ma'am, did you ever face any challenges being a woman in this profession?
Well, I would say that from 1980 to 1990, which were the 10 years when I really worked alone and built up my portfolio, I guess it was a lonely life professionally. But I was quite happy. I had my family. By then, I had 2 children. I have a husband who always supported me. I had my parents, lots of friends, having been brought up in Mumbai. And I never really was ambitious in that. I had no business plan that I have to do this and then I have to do that, My road was to build. One thing I did decide, with no disrespect to interior design, which I do a lot of today, was I took a stand that I would build. Whoever came to me, I would say, I'm an architect and I want to build. So I think to that extent, many people the next sentence would be, oh, you do only this or do only that. So maybe in other people's perception, it may have been difficult, but I was very clear what I wanted to do. And then in 1990, a gentleman called Mr. Deobhakta, he invited me to give a talk in Nagpur, a delivery of an important lecture. And that's when I realized for the first time that I really had a body of work and I could go out now and talk about it. So I always remember him and his wife giving me the confidence that I was an architect who built and, not moan and groan about what we could not do, but rather celebrate what we can do.
Okay. Ma'am, if we see your body of work, you've practically done almost everything in architecture, be it a hotel, be it conservation, be it corporate offices, be it residences. How do you become such a versatile architect?
Well, when we live in a country as diverse as India, how could we be anything else? For me, the greatest joy has been able to work right from the Himalayas down to the deep south, from the east through the tribal areas of Jharkhand, Madhya Pradesh, and right up to the Gulf of Khambat. We have a country where the geography is different, the religion is different, the food is different, the languages are different. There's so much diversity in dress. So each project I did was like going to a different part of the world and doing another project. So when people say, what have you done abroad? Why would we want to when we have a country like ours where every project is so challenging? So naturally, when we do work all over the country, we do different types of work. So whether it's a hotel in the Himalayas, whether it was a water management system in Jharkhand, whether it's a state-of-the-art R&D center in Jamshedpur, or whether it's rehabilitating a earthquake devastated village in Kutch, or whether it's Temple Town down south in Tamil Nadu. So we are so privileged. And that's what I've loved most about being an architect, that every project that comes, we do research, we learn about it, and it's challenging and it's a new experience. There's no monotony, no boredom, no repetition. Which profession has that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Brinda ma'am, you just mentioned about the Bhuj restoration of a village called Bhadli. I would like you to talk about this project because I really believe it is one of your most successful and probably a project which is close to your heart as well.
Yes. So in 2000, there was the big earthquake on the 26th of January. And the Pale family, the Chauhan family, one of their nephews was one Mr. Dalal, for whom I used to do different types of pro bono work, whether it was a KM hospital or whatever. And I remember the day after this earthquake, he called me and he said, he always calls me Mrs. Somaya, not Brinda, unlike other clients. He said, we've got to go and find a village and we've got to do some work there. So immediately we set off, a group of us, and we went to it was just devastated. Bhuj was just devastated. And we searched for some time, supported by various other people, to find a village where we felt we could help. Now that area has a Hindu-Muslim population, which is more or less, balanced in many ways. So a lot of the Hindu villages had been taken by NGOs. A lot of the Muslim villages had taken their NGOs. So we were looking for a village which nobody had taken. And we found this village which had a sort of an equitable balance of both religions. It was called Bhadli, and it was quite close to the border of Pakistan, actually. It was, when I went there, there was nothing. There was just rubble. And they were all, the children and everybody was sleeping outdoors. It was cold. It was January. And we asked them what they wanted. I think this is the important thing, because the government and many others were rebuilding villages. They were just doing it on a grid in an open piece of land. But when I began to ask these people, and this is what is important, what do you want? They had 2 or 3 simple answers. They said, we want to come back to the same piece of land where we are. We don't want to be taken somewhere else. We want to design a place where we can keep our animals. Some houses had 1 family, some had 2 families. So you can't just design like they're some sort of graph. So the first thing we did was we did detailed analysis, and we studied the village, did the necessary drawings, understood how the village was set out, who was whose neighbor. You want to go back to your same neighbor as well. We can't change social systems overnight. We have to educate people to change, if you want them to change. But sometimes they know better than we know. So we designed 3 types of houses, of 1 room, 1 bedroom, and a 2 bedroom. And then we worked with the village. And heading the village panchayat was this tough woman. And I had to obey her. Whenever I went, she would call me, she would make me sit on one of those charpoi type of beds.
Khatia.
Yeah. And then she would give me some purple-looking drink. And I was always petrified, because one thing I was scared of was not getting sick when I traveled all over India, and that is through water. But I dared not drink that drink, because she was watching me. And then there were peanuts, because a lot of peanuts grow in that area. There was some raw mango cut up. And we had to sit and listen to what the villagers wanted for the village. Okay. So we rebuilt the entire village, thanks to my client who gave the money for it. We saved all the doors and windows, so we recycled a major portion. We reused even the demolished houses, all the rubble in the foundations. And we also made the buildings much stronger for not just earthquakes, but for cyclones also. So we changed the design. And it was wonderful. Then finally, they wanted a school as well. So we got a school built. And what we did, which was different, the client said that they must rebuild their own houses. Okay. And there was depression when your entire village is gone. There's nothing to see. So we encouraged them to rebuild, and we paid them for rebuilding. So by doing that, they got back confidence, they generated income for themselves, and they began to work together. And that's how the houses were rebuilt of the village. The school, of course, was much bigger. We got a small contractor. I insisted that we should have a balwadi. They did a lot of bandini work there. I insisted that they should have a place where the women could work. And today that school is, I mean, we go back quite often, and the village is booming. They've got, they're exporting bandini around the world. They've got dish antenna. And the other day, when somebody went, we even saw cars. Yes. So obviously they're very successful. And I have watched a young girl called Mezabin, which she must have been 6 years old when I went first. And she was sitting outside in the cold, and she also said that she wants to come back to her same land. And then I followed her life till she was 12. She was studying in the school. And then I went back when she was 16, and she wasn't there, and I wondered why. She had finished school here, and she had gone to the next village to do her +2. And then she came back, and we met. So it was very emotional. when we finished the village, the women of the village embroidered, Kutch embroidery. They embroidered a beautiful sari for me, which I wore for my daughter's engagement. Yes. So that sort of empathy that we give and the love and affection that we get back without compromising creativity, without compromising good design is possible. We come from a country where we have still 400 million poor people. And architects are hardly 150,000, 200,000. So we cater to a minuscule proportion of the population. If we want to change that and become important in the growth of the nation, we have to spread ourselves much more and do many, many different types of work. And that's been my philosophy.
That's such an inspiring story. But ma'am, when you were rehabilitating these villages and the people, did you ever face any challenges?
Every profession has challenges. You cannot be without challenges. It was very remote. I had to go. I told you the physical challenges that come as well. Mental challenges also, because the first design we gave, we had done the slope up to a certain area and then a smaller slope. This big panchayat woman said, no, that's not lucky. You redesign that. It's got to be absolutely equal and balanced on both sides. So we were actually taking feedback in some ways from her. So challenges are many. As far as working with people, all of us know it's in any profession. You have clients who understand your work. The main thing for our profession is we have to keep our value systems, our ethics, and our integrity in place. Once we do that, some people won't come to us, which is fine, but many people will come to us and your path will be straight and clear.
Great. Brinda ma'am, if I see your trajectory, you have an impressive body of work, especially in the field of conservation and restoration also. Was that a conscious decision or it came as a natural progression?
It was just by chance, actually. One of the projects I got in 1990 was on Tulsi Pipe Road, which is now, you have all the malls over there. And it was part of the old Kamla mills. It was actually a creche for the mill workers. And this client had bought it and asked us to convert it into his office. So I just did it. I didn't think anything that I was restoring or conserving or recycling or retrofitting or all the R's that exist. And it won an award for conservation. So I was really surprised from the Indian Heritage Society that I've gone into conservation, because I'm not a trained conservationist. But what I want to say today to all the young people here is that coming from a country like India, where we have almost a 5,000-year-old civilization, today we have thousands and thousands of monuments. And the ASI has listed only about 7,000 or 8,000 of them. So every single architect has to also be a conservationist. You don't have to necessarily have gone to some degree in UK or USA for a year and done something and only then you can conserve. Everybody can conserve within their practice. It doesn't matter what it is. And today, after 30 years of that, it's become even more important, because conservation is a very sustainable way of building. It is a circular economy where you don't break, where you don't have to bring new materials in. So whether, as I mentioned earlier, whether you recycle something, whether you retrofit it, make it stronger, whether you restore it and conserve it, those are all different words essentially for sustainability. And so today it has to be an integral part of every architect's portfolio. For mine, it came by chance, and then my love for it, because I've always believed that we have just one Earth, planet Earth. So if we don't look after it, we're all in trouble. So the architects all have to do it, because the construction industry contributes a huge amount to carbon. release. We all know that, whether it's through the air conditioning or whether it's through rubble, whether it's through building new. So we are primarily responsible to ensure that we think of very important ways to look after the planet. And conservation today is one way. Now, this is separate from the historic value of conservation, whether it's colonial buildings like in Mumbai, whether it's vernacular buildings, whether it's mosques, whether it's temples, it can be anything. It can be old schools, it can be palaces. We have everything under the sun. So there's plenty of work for people to go out and conserve. Within Mumbai, I have been able to restore many, many buildings within the historic South Mumbai and the colonial part of Mumbai. This includes the Rajabai Tower, the St. Thomas's Cathedral. We did 5 buildings of the cathedral schools, the old yacht club. I mean, there are lots and lots of buildings we have restored within the heart of Mumbai. And it's been very, very fulfilling because in every city we go, the historic centers of the city should be saved. You know, we can't save the entire city because growth, we were 4 million, 3 million people in the 50s. Today we're 22 million in the city of Mumbai. So what do you do? But there's certain parts of the city which have to conserve memory. Because if you don't understand your past, then your present and then subsequently your future gets questioned. So it goes beyond architecture to conserve and to restore and to protect. And I hope all the young people here today will all become conservationists also.
Okay. Would you like to give a piece of advice to these young students here who want to take up conservation and restoration as a mainstream practice?
Well, if you're so passionate that you only want to do conservation, that's fine. But I personally believe it need not be the only vertical within your practice. It takes a lot of time. We're one of the most, how do I put it, frankly, ill-paid professions in the world. So we know how much of a struggle it is. And conservation projects take time, they take effort, they take years sometimes. So it's difficult for many studios to just do that. Some can survive. They may have other reasons how they're able to survive. But there's nothing wrong in combining it with other things that you do which can earn you income. So a practice is the balance. How do you balance a practice to do all the things that you love and want to do for this country and yet be able to have a decent living in an honest way? That's the challenge.
You've been working in this industry for probably more than 40 or 45 years. In these years, has the industry or the profession evolved?
Well, in every way. I mean, we'll have to list it. Let's talk about technology. When I began, we didn't even have a computer. I bought my first computer in 1980-something for 1 lakh. I had to take a loan. And those days, a computer costed 4 times as much as a laptop costs today. So you can imagine. But I love technology. And today, my studio is doing all sorts of things. So definitely, technology there's a quantum leap over there. There's a quantum leap in our country. I mean, I don't know how much history people know, but we've had many, many difficult years. We had years of isolation. We had years of poverty. We've had years of emergency. It was only after the country began to open up that the country began to grow. So the opportunities today are tenfold, 20-fold more than we had. Also, the materials that are available. I remember when I had to look for different materials, whether it was, for architecture, to make the buildings the way I wanted. I used to walk around the streets of Mumbai. I used to go to the lumber yard, which unfortunately caught fire day before yesterday, which was very, very sad. And I have spent hours going through all these sort of areas, brick kilns, trying to find out what materials are available. Today they have everything, they have every opportunity. But with all this, the size of jobs are more, the number of jobs are more. I still know it's not an easy profession to build up on your own. So it's very important that I think young architects train in studios where they respect the work done in that studio and then decide what they want to do, whether they want to continue there because there are opportunities there or begin to do something on their own. So there are many, many different verticals. I did a conference of women in architecture, women in design, and that's another topic, so I won't start that just now. But it showed how architects can go, they can become photographers, they can become journalists, they can become so many other things. Education is never wasted. But I hope all of you will stay within the architectural profession because it's got to be the best in the world.
Ma'am, now moving forward, I also got an opportunity to meet a few close friends, family members who are, closely working and related to you. So we have a small section where they have something to say about you as a person, so that these people also know how is Brinda Somaya as a person. So let's have a look at the AV.
Hi, my name is Nandini Somaya Sampath, and I'm the daughter of architect Brinda Somaya. When I think of her as a person, I think her greatest strength is her kindness, and that is rare. She has the ability to be able to connect, to be genuinely interested, and have an impact on different scales. And I think that's what it takes to be an architect. It is the master of the arts. And to do it successfully in India, you have to understand your people. And I think she's passionate about her country and even more passionate about the people. I think her journey is filled with characteristics like curiosity, courage, great bravery. I think the greatest and most amazing portfolio that she's created is in its diversity. The point of working in India is you need to be able to cater to that spectrum of people and clientele. And that was what has always amazed me. And as architects, we often find architects who are very stylistic or have a very clear vision. But I think the greatest thing I've learned from her is, are you listening and are you hearing to what your client wants? And then can you build that vision? So yes, an incredible and diverse journey through time. Loves golgappas, loves pani puri, loves pickle and curd. She's a good South Indian. Dosa, idli, all of that is a must. But I think a very diverse palate. So having traveled to many parts of the world and India, very easy eater, enjoys it all. As much as she enjoys places and people, she enjoys her food. Post 6 p.m. here, she is with my amazing dad watching Netflix and completely unwinding. I think we're a very close-knit family. We're very fortunate. We have each other. I have my older brother Vikram. They're just two of us, Vikram and I. So we're very privileged to have had a very full childhood and continue to have these very special relationships with our parents and our mother in particular. I think for me, she is forever. She will continue to work for very, very long. The studio and her office are her home, and that's the way it should be, to many, many more decades of living, loving, and learning together.
Hello, my name is Mary Woods. I have the great honor, pleasure, and yet the impossible task of speaking about Brinda Somaya, a legend of design, a half-century of her work as a designer, planner, preservationist, educator, community activist, and citizen of India and the world. And here I speak not only as a historian of her work, but also a colleague privileged to have worked with her on several projects and a friend of 25 years. Ours is a young friendship by her lights, given that she still has friends from her earliest school days. Although she studied architecture at Sir J.J. College in Mumbai, Brinda Somaya became a humanist too, pursuing a graduate work in the liberal arts at Smith College in the U.S. Henceforth, I will refer to her as Dr. Somaya, since she received an honorary doctorate in fine arts from her American alma mater, just one of the many honors she has received, over a lifetime. Dr. Somaya returned to India to help build a new nation, working from a garden shed behind her family home in the early 1970s. For a woman to create an architecture practice on her own, without a spouse, father, or other male partner, was and still is unusual anywhere in the world. Dr. Somaya is thus a role model for us all when we are seeking a better balance between our work and our lives. Dr. Somaya has built a mainstream practice with regard to the size of her office and the scale of her work. But in her commitments to research, pro bono projects, and equity for construction workers, especially women laborers and their children, hers is a practice that is more studio-based or an alternative one. She's an empathetic architect who listens carefully and is always learning. Thus, it is not surprising that she has become the family architect for clients now through 3 generations. Dr. Somaya does not impose her designs and her ideas on her clients and users of her buildings. Instead, she's willing to change her designs to encompass their needs and dreams. Dr. Somaya inspires us with her creativity, intellect, and passion, but she also moves us with her idealism, humility, and generosity of spirit. As her mother once told her, "You have to learn how to pay your rent on earth." And Dr. Brinda Somaya has always and fully repaid us all in so many different ways. Thank you very much.
I'm Mabel D'Souza, and I have been working with Mrs. Brinda Somaya from 1987. She is very hardworking. She travels such a lot, but even if she has traveled middle of the night, she will be there in the office in the morning. She's very energetic, and till today she is. I don't feel she looks 75 years. I will still say she is 50 or less than 50. You can always approach her for anything, even for personal matters. She's always there for you. She's a foodie and enjoys food. She likes homemade food also. I love Mrs. Somaya. I have got no words for her. She is the best, a very good boss. And I've always loved working with her. That is why I am here today for so many years.
Hi, so I'm Homiar Goiporia. Currently, I'm the VP projects in the office. Been working here maybe 25 years plus, around that time. As far as working with Mrs. Somaya goes, she's very approachable, always involved with the projects, and it's a pretty reasonably chilled out office in terms of even interacting with juniors and seniors too. So even juniors have an open door for her. So it's been more like a teamwork all throughout. She's very calm and composed most of the time, and it's actually good to speak to her and use her as a sounding board when you come across any issues, that you think may get a little complicated. So it's always good to speak and get advice from her. It's been actually quite phenomenal, because from the type of projects that we had to what we are currently doing, and the number of awards and the recognition that has come with it, awards, the achievements. So it has been a journey which is fairly remarkable, and something that to be proud of. So I wish Mrs. Somaya all the best for the future and the office, and may it go from strength to strength.
Hi, my name is Sagar Shinde. I'm working with Somaya and Kalappa for past 21 years. I work in the capacity of the IT head over here. Basically, I take care of all the things that go wrong. So it's been fantastic working with the SNK. She's a motherly figure, but where work is concerned, she's very strict also, and very approachable, always there to listen to you and guide you. So it's basically not just work. Even if you have any personal issues family issues, we can always talk to her and find a way up. Traveling with Mrs. Somaya is like, she's a good companion, one. And then she'll have a book when, after some time, she'll start reading a book and she'll be into that. But you can always break her with whatever stupid questions also. And she'll listen to you and answer properly. All her hard work and what I could say about her is, what she says is, if you want to succeed, you should love what you do. And she absolutely loves her work. You can like just count on it that she could be here like 7 days a week also if she required. She's always been there because she knows my family, she knows my wife, my son. All the best, ma'am, for the future of SNK and your personal life. And may you grow from strength to strength.
Hi, I'm Rinalini Gadyok. I am an architect, but I practice as an architecture critic and curator. And I have known Mrs. Somaya since 2015 now. She was my first professional interview when I was editing an architectural and design magazine at that time. And I remember I walked into her studio and my first impression of her was that she reminded me of my mother. She was draped in this beautiful crisp cotton sari. She had short salt and pepper hair and immediately made me feel comfortable. So Mrs. Somaya has been a venerated name in the architectural field in India, but her practice actually goes beyond the office and her projects. She has been a very strong advocate for feminine voice in architecture in India. She has been fighting for a sense of equality, a sense of equal positioning for all stakeholders in the design and architecture and building processes. And that's what's really interesting, because it's not only about the larger stakeholders or the higher thinkers, but she has been fighting for people who are on the ground actually building. So for me, Mrs. Somaya has not only been a huge source of inspiration, but she has been an immense support and a source of encouragement, and has really sort of encouraged me to find the wind beneath my wings and to go with it and do things that I wanted to do. I wish Mrs. Somaya the absolute best. And I hope that she continues in her own way to encourage and support people like she has across the world, across India. And she inspires me on a daily basis. And if I could be a small part of her process, that is what I would wish for.
So this segment was powered by Tostem, framing the beauty of living. Ma'am, Mabel ma'am, your assistant, she spoke about your husband. How did you both meet? When did marriage happen?
Actually, we got married in 1974. Anand's parents and my parents have been friends for decades. So we actually knew each other as children. But he would always say, the moment I saw those Chinappa nerds coming near us, I would run out of the house and not meet them. So you see, we didn't have a very good impression of us at that time. But anyway, so he's been wonderful. I don't think I could have, it's really true that we need support, whether the woman needs support from the man or the man needs support from the woman. But you need a lot of family support in a profession like ours, or any profession today, because we have to travel, we have long working hours, and it's not easy. Especially when I was building the hotel in Russia, in Tashkent, and I had to actually go away for almost 2 weeks at a time. And Anand would manage there were two, I have a son, Vikram, and Nandini's my daughter. So that sort of support he's always given me. Okay. Yeah.
And if I'm not wrong, you'll be soon completing 50 years.
Yes, next year we'll be 50 years.
Half century.
Yeah, imagine.
I'm aware that you have a passion and love for food. Do you want to know what ma'am likes?
Oh, I just love all types of food. I have two passions. I love to travel. And when I travel, I love to eat also. I love to sightsee. And as an architect, Anand gets quite bored because I will go to a historic ruin and I can imagine what it must be like. And he will say, what are these stones you're looking at all the time? But now, thanks to AI, I think I will make a film for what it must have been and show it to him before we go, so he won't
he's
grumble.
prepared.
So he's prepared. So I love to travel. I love food. I love different types of food. I enjoy it. I'm not a good cook at all, but I'd like to say I've always had somebody who's good at cooking to work with me. So,
We share a common interest in food.
yes.
Pani puri.
Ah, yes, of course. There used to be, you all are too young to know, there used to be a restaurant called Kailash Parbat in Colaba.
Yeah.
Now it's still there in Colaba.
Multiple chains,
And we had to go and stand there and they would give us that and we would have the pani puri. It was just delicious. So good memories.
Brinda ma'am, it's been an interesting conversation so far. But here we have our next generation architects sitting in front of us. And I'm sure they are desperately waiting and eager to hear from you and interact with you. So let's have a round of some quick question and answers with them. So who's going first? Yeah, yes, please.
Good afternoon, ma'am. My name is Neha Bhatt. I'm from Tagore School of Architecture. To you is that, like, when you started out, when you were first starting out with your degree, what was your philosophy in design back then, and over the years, how has it changed, like with working with so many various types of projects?
So it's always a difficult question because people always say, what is your style? I have no style. And I don't think that any building of mine looks exactly like the other. I don't think it's got a stamp that this is a Brinda Somaya building, like you can say about certain architects. And I think that's what's really important, that the philosophy which leads to the concept is that it's got to be about many, many different things. The land. You have to listen to the land. The land is very important. Hear it carefully. You've got to listen to the geography, the location, the climate, the people who are going to be using that. Have you spoken to them? Who is your client? The client is also important because they're going to be putting a lot of money into the project. So that's what's important, is that there's so many aspects. So that's got to be your philosophy as an architect. How do you have a client come to you, trust you perhaps with his life savings, his or her life savings, sometimes a very large amount of money, to give him and the people for whom he is building something that will raise their spirits when they enter the spaces that you design for them.
Who's going next? Yes, please.
What is your guru mantra for students like us who are looking forward to enter these fields like conservation, restorations, retrofitting, etc.?
Well, I don't have a short mantra. I will start saying many things. I keep saying the same thing, that you must really love and enjoy what you do. You must have a love for history, a love for archaeology, and a love for architecture to take up conservation. And you must understand the country or the place that you're conserving. That's all. Don't feel afraid of it. It's not at all frightening or different. It's also technically different from building new. And I think you have to educate yourself on the conservation technical aspects. You know, how do you conserve stone? How do you conserve brick? How do you repair buildings? For instance, we just completed a building on DN Road, which you know is a very important historic precinct of Mumbai. It was a school. We started work and we had three problems. One problem was the metro was being built on DN Road underground. So this huge excavation was taking place which removes water from below. And then the water begins to move and then that moves the foundation areas, etc. So that was one thing. We had the pandemic, which threw us off ground for 1.5 years. And then we had the cyclone. So we had all these three aspects in an old 150-year-old building, and we had to address it. Now, if it was a new building, it would have been much easier. So it's almost a different type of challenge. But I'm sure you'll be just fine. Just love what you do and go for it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Who's going next? Yes, please.
Hello, sir. Hello, ma'am. I'm Rakhi Vishwakarma. And my question is, India being a vast, diverse and cultural tapestry, it requires its essence to be present in every space. So how can we as architects ensure that it is preserved while designing?
It is preserved because of who you are. It's not an external preservation. You are India, right? So it doesn't matter where you come from, what language you speak, what you follow. That's the essence within you. And that will come out in its own way into what you design. That's all. It's simple as that.
Any more questions?
Hello, sir. Hello, ma'am. My name is Unnati Waghela. I wanted to ask that, can you discuss the role of community engaged in your architectural practices, particularly in projects that involve cultural or historical significance?
Of course, community has to be engaged in anything you do. If it's a societal project, like I talked to you about the village project. But we had another little project outside Mumbai where there was the flower sellers near a temple. And we had to sort of redo the flooring of the temple, and they wanted to move the flower sellers out from there. So they built their shop somewhere and expected them to move, and they refused to move. So the client came to me and said, please go and talk to them. Why are they not moving? We built something much better for them. So I went and asked them, why are you guys not moving? And they said, because nobody asked us what we wanted. I said, what did you want? They said, please understand that our shops have to be on the way to the temple, because that's when the devotees come. If you put us in a corner, no one's going to come and buy the flowers. So they removed us from the path to the temple. Second, when they designed the little flower stalls, they did not provide a space for the leftover flowers from the previous day. We are poor people. We cannot throw away the flowers, but it's very hot in Mumbai. So we need an below ground place to store the flowers so we can use them the next day also. And thirdly, we need a place to hang the flowers. They didn't provide that. So we redesigned the shops. We've changed the location. We provided these two simple things, and they all moved there, and we redid the plaza. I always tell this story as a very simple way to explain how important it is to listen to your client, whether they're a flower seller or whether they're a millionaire.
We can take one more last question. Who would like to take it? Oh, yes, please.
Hello, Brinda ma'am. Hi, Karan. So my question is, while envisioning the future of architecture, how do you see the advancement in technologies influencing the conservational and conceptual aspect of design?
Well, there's going to be huge change as we move ahead in the architectural profession. And I think one of the biggest changes will be the way we design in terms of, I explained to you earlier, the circular economy and sustainability, that we cannot just design as we feel like. We always have to take into account what are we doing to endanger the planet. Are we designing correctly, accurately, or are we only thinking of ourselves and how we want this building to look? So there's huge amount of technology available now. I'm connected with certain sustainable foundations. And for instance, recently one of the awards that we gave for the Wholesome Foundation was a building that was designed in Zurich, where that woman used everything from other buildings that were being demolished. So the way we use it is we just see how can we use it. You know, maybe we will change the doors and windows that we get, maybe we will change the brick. But what she did was she went round to the different towns, found out which buildings were being demolished, took measurements of those trusses, of those brick walls, of those windows and doors, and then designed her building to accommodate all that. Now that has to be a total elimination of your personal ego to design a building like that. But that is what the Europeans now believe is going to be the future if we want to bring down that temperature by 1.5 degrees. So we have that aspect, and then we have India, which is exploding with infrastructure, with airports, with train stations, with buildings, with museums. How do you balance these two? So I think you have to be very clear in your mind and decide how are you going to create a realistic balance between what you have to build new, which is going to absorb and take up a huge amount of carbon energy and spill it out, as against the other part that you have to preserve. So we have a huge amount of ordinary buildings in our country, which we should save, and then decide when we build new, how do we build new? Go study, do your research, see what's happening in different parts of the world, and apply it to your practice.
Thank you, Brinda ma'am, for this amazing and a wonderful session with our students. I'm sure they are going back with some really good memories to cherish for their upcoming years. Thank you so much. Ma'am, before we come towards the end of this episode, there are two things which I would like to, you to talk about. You've been a founder of a foundation called Hecar. What is the foundation about?
So I started the Hecar Foundation many decades ago. It's an acronym for Heritage, Education, Conservation, Architecture and Restoration. We actually used it first when we were restoring that village, rebuilding that village, because it had to be done with many NGOs, etc. Post that, we brought out several books. One happens to be a monograph, which was brought out by Hecar with the Mappin publishing from Ahmedabad. And we brought out books on existing buildings in different parts of the country, women in architecture. So I'd like to digress a bit and tell you that in 2000, I organized a conference called Women in Architecture, where we called women from South Asia who had never been called to India before, and we celebrated their work. There's a website, there's too much to share with you in the short time. But after 20 years, we had another conference called Women in Design, which was truly international, where we called women from all over the world to come and talk about women in the construction industry. And here I would like to share a short story among the two I want to share, that when I was building that Bombay Presidency Golf Club, which I told you about, I was 8 months pregnant with my first child, and they were casting the roof, 9 months, sorry, and they were casting the roof slab. And my due date was like 3 days ahead of me having to climb. My mother was petrified and she said, I've got to come with you. Anyway, she came, I climbed up to the roof, and I saw the women who were there those days. They used to carry the concrete on their heads. Some of you may not even know that. And they looked at me with so much empathy and so much care that that day I decided that I would look after women in construction as well, and not just women professionals like all of you here today. I want each one of you to make sure that when you prepare a bills of quantities or you write specifications for your tender documents, that you ensure that you provide adequate housing for women, a proper toilet facility, a proper water facility, a proper electrical facility, maybe a creche, maybe a small school. We have done that for all our sites because now we build a lot of campuses, you may know, large campuses, millions of square feet and hundreds of acres of land is what we're doing as well. So we make sure that the housing for the labor, whether it's men or women, should be proper and up to standard. The contractors can jolly well pay for that. So put it into your tender documents, go and visit and make sure that it's a place where even you could go and stay. Also, I want to get women out of just carrying concrete on their heads. I want them to become welders, I want them to become painters, I want them to become masons. So you have to improve their skills, because unless we do that, women are not going to be in the construction field. I'm sure all of you, if you look and see what's happening in Mumbai, do you ever see women working? When I began working, we used to see so many women working on construction sites. But because they bring their children, they have different type of problems, everyone's made sure they're nowhere to be seen. They've disappeared. Make sure they come back into the site. They deserve to earn equal wages and respect. So I expect all of you young people to do that. Going to end today sharing a story with all of you. Many of you may have heard it before, but if you have, it doesn't matter. Go out and tell others the story. So it's a folk story, and there was a fire in a forest, a big fire in the forest. And all the animals ran away. The tigers, the lions, the elephants all ran away. And the only thing that was left was a little bird. And the bird was carrying water in its beak from a little water body nearby and trying to put off the fire. So all the animals laughed at that bird, and they said, "You will never be able to put out this fire." So the bird said, "At least I'm doing my bit." So I gave this talk in Goa many years ago. I came back to Mumbai. I thought that was the end of the story, that the bird was doing its bit. And the next day in my email box, I had these hundreds of emails from young people all over the country who said, "You've only told half the story. So what's the other half? We will tell you." So while the bird was doing this, the gods above were watching. And the gods felt so sad to see this little bird trying to put off the fire that the gods began to cry. And when gods cry, it comes down as rain. And the rain put off the fire. So that's what each one of you, don't worry how big or small your contribution is, go out and do your bit. Thank you.
Thank you, Brinda ma'am. We are approaching towards the end of our episode. I wish this conversation goes on and on, but of course, we have to stop it somewhere. Before we let you go, we want to take this opportunity to have a small photograph with you. Can I have the portrait, please? Ma'am, can we have a small picture together? This photography moment was brought to you by Demore by Qtone, luxury tiles and windows for your homes. हमारा और बृंदा मैम का फोटोग्राफ तो हो गया, लेकिन आप लोगों को भी बृंदा मैम के साथ फोटो लेना है तो आ जाओ. कम 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 कम. तो दोस्तों, ये थी आर्किटेक्ट बृंदा सोमैया. बृंदा मैम के आर्किटेक्चर इंडस्ट्री के कंट्रीब्यूशन से तो पूरी दुनिया वाकिफ है, लेकिन वो एक बात जो उन्हें सबसे अलग बनाती है वो है उनका निडर स्वभाव और सतत महिलाओं को सशक्त करने का उनका प्रयास. वी वुड लाइक टू थैंक आवर टाइटल स्पॉन्सर टॉस्टेम, आवर पावर्ड बाय स्पॉन्सर डीमोर बाय क्यूटोन एंड आवर एसोसिएट स्पॉन्सर वॉक्स. दोस्तों, जल्दी मिलेंगे अगले हफ्ते एक और नए लेजेंड के साथ. तब तक देखते रहिए लेजेंड्स ऑफ डिजाइन. गुड नाइट, शब्बा खैर, जय श्री कृष्ण. हाय, आई हैव एन अनाउंसमेंट. दोस्तों, आज के इस सोशल मीडिया के दौर में आइए हम आपको लेके चलते हैं उस जमाने में जहां पे कम्युनिकेशन होता था लेटर्स से. वॉक्स प्रेजेंट्स लेटर टू लेजेंड्स. आप अपने फेवरेट लेजेंड्स को इस एड्रेस पर खत लिखिए एंड वी विल इंश्योर कि आपके लेटर्स हम आपके फेवरेट लेजेंड्स तक पहुंचा देंगे.